Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Kelvis podcast. As always, starting a new podcast, I have to put the disclaimer out there that anything that's said on my podcast is our personal view and opinion, or for entertainment purpose only. Always consult the professional people that the subject we're talking about, because we are not experts on this show. Again, it's our personal opinion and entertainment purpose only. With that said, welcome. I've been off the net for a while. I've been doing some other ventures, but I'm here today with somebody very, very close to me. I know him very well. We're going to be talking about mental health, behavior, and things like that. And I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself, Mr. Ivan Pride.
Yes, my name is Ivan Pride. Born and raised in Wayne and Dupin County here in North Carolina. Went to school here at Fayetteville State University and decided to make a life for myself here in Fayetteville. So spent a majority of my career working in behavioral health in Robertson County. So as of late, I'm working and managing services in Robertson, Scotland, Bladen, and also in northern counties, Wilson, Dupin, and so on and so forth. So I've been working in behavioral health since 1995, starting working one-on-one with individuals, and then now I'm a behavioral health director.
Wow. So you have many years of vast experience in this area.
Yes.
So it's no secret we are first cousins. Our mothers was sisters.
Right.
I really appreciate you came up here to do this podcast with me. I've been really looking forward to it. So since we came from the same background, we both grew up in Fayetteville, Warsaw area, Boughton, all those areas down there. And I was talking to you before. Mental health, that was never something we talked about as kids.
Right.
Saying never anything that our moms or our aunts or grandma and them ever really talked about. So my question is to you, what do you think some of the reasons that stigma is on Black community when it comes to dealing with mental health and seeking someone in that area to, deal with some issues that we have?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is that our community is good at keeping secrets.
Yeah.
So, we have those cousins or and those family members that may have behavioral health issues or developmental delays. And what I've seen over the years are families that keep those individuals in the home and, trying to take care of them, on their own without seeking services. During my years, I've seen where, individuals keep those family members in the home and they get old and pass away, and then there's that individual left, to fend for themselves.
Right.
So we try to get, services in place for those individuals. But yeah, our communities are really good at keeping secrets and not, looking for professional help. And they're also really good at using faith-based services. They'll come and talk to the pastor, talk to someone in church that may have similar situations, but seeking professional help has not always been one of the things that's been done a lot in our communities.
That's true. I can recall when I was a little boy, my Lucy raised me, and I remember we had a family member that came down from Maryland that was on drugs real bad, and Howard brought him down to stay with us for a little while, and he happened to get hold of some bad stuff, and he already had issues, not only drug issues, but he had mental issues too.
Right.
And he got on top of the house. He kept saying that he seen pink elephants, and it was crazy. And I'll never forget, my grandma called up there and said, "Hey, come and get him. He got to go." But he definitely suffered not only from a drug addiction, but mental health. And so, yeah, definitely in our community, and not just only in our community, I think abroad. When I talk to people every day and I talk to them, have you ever thought about seeking mental health? Just talk about some things that happen to you, because I don't think a lot of people don't realize things that happen to them in their past, in their childhood, they carry that on into their adulthood. And a lot of times they don't realize it's buried deep down in their subconscious. And a lot of things they do is from their childhood. And I've heard numerous people, grown people my age, say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with me. and what I need to see someone, talk to someone for, and I try to tell them, even myself, being in the military many years, came back from my first tour from Iraq. I was suffering from post-traumatic stress, and I didn't know it. I was drinking. I'll be honest about myself. I was drinking. I wouldn't come into formations, and it took my leadership to say, "Hey, man, you need to go see somebody. You can't just not come to work and you come in here smelling like And I'm not a big drinker. And when I started getting some counseling, I realized that not only from what I experienced from combat, things that happened to my childhood, it's still affecting me as a grown person.
Right.
And so I'm a big advocate of definitely getting that help. And I was in counseling for a while, and unfortunately I had to cut my counseling off because I had to redeploy. And I think that happens to a lot of service members, that they be in counseling, and at the time, the high tempo of the deployments, when Iraq kicked off, Afghanistan kicked off, a lot of soldiers were going back to to deployments, and they wasn't able to get that counseling, that service they really needed, and then it just affected them as they transitioned out of service, retired, or just got out of service, and later on down the road they realized they need that service. So how do you think that just on in the Black community, how do you think mental health affect the other minority or race of people?
So there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there. So first, you talked about trauma and past trauma, and you're right. There are some traumatic events that take place in lives of all of us that will affect how we react to certain things as we become adults. But what we've learned in trauma-informed care is that the more contact or the more involved you have with an adult, it kind of lessens the effect of those traumatic events. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, you would think it'd be a parent, or a grandparent.
Right.
But it can also be like your favorite teacher, or sometimes it can be the parent of one of your friends that you feel comfortable talking to.
Right.
But that's not always the case. So there are some things that may have taken place that we just don't talk about, and try and keep to ourselves. And then you talked about going through things while in the military. Living in Fayetteville, we do see a lot of individuals that's gone through traumatic events. Through Desert Storm and on. But one of the good things that's come out of COVID-19, and I know that's kind of hard to say, behavioral health has made a transition going from the office-based services, you going into an office and getting your services, talking to a therapist, and then going back home or whatever, to now a lot of the services are provided via telephone in a couple of ways. You can do it via video conference, and there are now a lot of sites where clinicians have logged on to, and now they're providing services, while they're at home. My wife, for instance, I hope she don't see this, but she'll sit in the kitchen and she'll have a nice dress shirt on, and have a little makeup and earrings on, and have her pajama bottoms on the bottom, and provide services all day. Send people via telephone or video conference, Zoom or WebEx or whatever. So with those individuals now, you don't have to be tied to a particular office going to see a clinician. You can, if you have to leave for a particular deployment or any other reason, you can just pull out your smartphone and get the services that you need.
Yeah, and that's how my counseling was done. Some of it was done by Zoom on my phone or telehealth type service. So that COVID has brought a new frontier to counseling, where it's not just to a location, a building. Now you can be mobile, and you can help people. You can take the notes, and you can do all kinds of things now because of COVID-19. So just going to talking about COVID-19. Me personally, I didn't have a problem being locked down because I did a lot of years in the military. I was sitting in Iraq and daydreaming about coming back to the States or Germany or wherever I was stationed at, but it didn't bother me. As long as I had internet, and something to do, it didn't bother me. But I've seen what a lot of people got depressed because the interaction.
Right.
They had the people interaction, more no other than a Zoom or some kind of video conference or telephone conference. I mean, can you elaborate on what COVID-19 has done to what you think a lot of people's mental state and the interaction that they used to have with people?
Yeah. So what we've seen over the last year and some change is during that period of isolation, there was, what you said, no interaction, no social interaction with a lot of people other than your immediate family. And, that can be good for a while, but after a while, you're like, okay, I need some adult time. I need some, times with my friend,
right.
All that kind of stuff. So there was an uptick in depression and anxiety. And not only COVID-19, it also, job loss also brought about a lot of that stuff. There
right.
was, a lot of anxiety come about, okay, how are we going to get food?
Right.
How am I going to pay, the rent? How am I going to,
right.
do those things without, income? And those things affected communities of color a whole lot more so than the other communities. And then pair that with the George Floyd incident.
Right.
People seeing that, it kind of, brought additional anxiety because you're sitting there watching this stuff on TV,
right.
and the only thing you watch on TV is COVID-19 or George, and you
right.
get scared of COVID-19 or you get amped up about George. For a minute you're like, oh God, the cases are getting higher and higher, and
right.
I got to stay, can't get toilet paper, can't
right.
you're all locked up in your house, and you got to use other things, and then you see people out protesting and see things going on with George, and you get amped up. So we did see an uptick in cases to the point of where there is a need for clinicians.
Yeah.
We need more clinicians out there.
Well, you brought that up, and I'm gonna go in and tap into it. So I mean, from your perspective, you talked about people saying that the number of people died. I mean, and you're right. I'm a big fan on CNN, and so I used to watch CNN, and it didn't bother me. But a lot of people say, "Well, why you watch CNN? Watch West?" I just like to be informed because it's just a part of who I am.
Right.
But and also the injustice that that we've seen throughout the United States with constantly there's been these shootings and all this stuff that's going on. And then being locked down, I would think that it would even add to the impact of
right.
of isolation and other things that's going on with people.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Just being black in America, you can be in your house minding your business, and next thing you know, they can bust your door down, shoot up the place, and say, I got a warrant, and it's the wrong house, and you done shot my wife.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then, so you got to live with that type of anxiety.
Right.
I, as a black man, I'm driving down the road, and, most people, they see the police, oh, that's just Harold. Hi, Harold. They wave at him, he drive by, and, it's all good.
Right.
But, I see that same Harold, and I'm like, oh, Lord, let me straighten up, 9 o'clock, whatever the position on the steering wheel, it's a different effect. So yeah, there's a whole lot of anxiety that's brought about when you see those type of things happening in our communities. Serving warrants and killing people at the wrong house. Getting shot while just getting pulled over, for a speeding ticket. Just playing in the park. Kids 12 years old playing in the park, getting shot and killed. Jogging through the neighborhood. People just jumping out of trucks, just end up shooting, killing you and everything. So it's it's that kind of stuff can bring about a lot of anxiety.
A lot of people, I've heard a lot of people, non-African American, non-minority, will say, well, that's a part of life. They don't see how we could, as African American, as males, or African American, or brown people, or other minorities, see right. that we would have a issue, a mental issue. From that, a lot of them don't understand why we do, but until you put in that situation, I tell people all the time,
right.
Until you put in that situation firsthand and experience the things that we experienced, then you wouldn't fully understand. You know what I'm saying? But you got those on the other side that say they don't really see it, and black lives matter is terrorists and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I tell people, know where you're getting the source of information from. And one thing I learned from college is you got to use reliable resources. You can't just get a resource that is for your political views or your views, because of course, I mean, if I watch CNN, they're gonna cater to my kind of belief, my political views, or my values. Sort of. You watch Fox, or you watch these other, or you go to certain blogs or certain website. It's hard to find a biased person or biased writing out there now, or a biased opinion where it's just speaking of facts and not adding into or taking clips of a speech and then playing that to use, in some kind of way. Well, let's talk about kids. You were just on a phone with me a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about Black fathers, and I just didn't remember you brought up them because we were talking about young teenagers, adults, and how you think this whole process of COVID-19 has affected. I got a 10-year-old son, and I got a 17-year-old son that's been doing virtual for the longest time since really school's been out. They haven't went back. He just went back to school, but I know for my son KJ, the social interaction has been tough for him because his brother's 17, and he, so there's that age difference, right? And they're not into the same things. So now I can see a difference in him that he's in school because he's around kids his age and stuff like that. But how to speak to how you think it affected, our kids being in this virtual platform of education?
Right. Well, so what's happened in the last year is parents really got to know their kids. I can speak from personal experience. I really got to know who my daughter is. I got to know, how she was doing in school, because now I'm in the role of the teacher. Mm-hmm. So, and speaking from personal experience, my daughter, behavior-wise, she has some minor issues in school. And I receive phone calls about her, having tantrums and so on and so forth. But as far as going to virtual school, she's doing quite well with it because, she doesn't have to interact with other people. I mean, you have some social butterflies, and then you got some loners. Like me and my daughter, we're loners. We can go in the house, watch TV, and we're good as long as we got something to eat. We're good. So she's not missing the social interaction, but you have some kids that is missing that social interaction. The negative impact of her going to virtual school is the lack of exercise. Okay. So she has picked up some weight, as did I.
Me too. I understand both.
I tell my friends I got this COVID-20. Yeah. That I'm hoping to break down after the pandemic. I can hopefully get back to a gym. But yeah, some kids, will take to virtual learning, and some, miss that social interaction. But my daughter's doing quite well with the virtual learning. So we've chosen not, to send her back for the last 6 weeks of school. Right. We're gonna keep her, and then we'll work on transitioning her back in the school in next school year. But yeah, parents are really getting to know their children. So we have seen more referrals from parents direct. Mm-hmm. So used to pre-COVID, the schools were making these referrals. Right. You might want to come take a look at Johnny because Johnny is having some issues in school. Right. And then we make contact with moms, and there's a lot of hesitation. Well, Johnny's not doing all this at home. Right. So I don't understand what the school is calling you about. Yeah. So there was
Johnny home.
Yeah, Johnny home.
I can speak from that experience too. I mean, KJ has gave us a run for our money, and also we able to see his learning curve. You know what I'm saying? I guess in some ways to gauge that because he's sitting in front of a screen trying to learn versus in person. I know I learn better hands-on. I'm a hands-on learner. You know what I'm saying? I can learn distance too. I got a little older, so I can learn a few tricks how to learn doing online schooling. But I prefer to be in a classroom. I'm a hands-on type person. So, and I think he's that kind of way. He doesn't really do well in the virtual aspect. You know what I'm saying? He's got the dog. And I had to tell the story. I got a call. I'm out working, and I started not answering the phone. It's like, who's just calling? But I answered the phone. It's like, yeah, it's his teacher. And she's like, Mr. Tang, Kelvis is the dog is on the keyboard. He's got a dog, and the dog is on the keyboard typing with his paws, and KJ's looking over here. You know what I'm saying? Right, it's like, right. Hey, you might want to call his mom. You know what I'm saying? Talk to him about that right there.
Right.
And the funny thing about the dog actually typing what needed to be typed.
What the dog?
You know what I'm saying? So he getting his education on too. But I think this virtual world, this whole COVID has affected our kids, us personally. But let's dive into relationships. Let's talk about single and married people. You know what I'm saying? Because especially for single people, I mean, a lot of people want to date, or they were doing this Zoom date. I listened to Steve Harvey's, in the middle of this thing, saying, people's coming on and say, well, I want to date, I'm by myself, but I'm scared of COVID. So, he was suggesting, hey, you put your nice background up on your Zoom, and you can have wine, virtual dating. That's new. I mean, that's kind of new, not new, but it's new in this era, this COVID-19, because most people are used to going out to the clubs, or if they at least meet online. If you meet online, it's a period of time that you meet face to face, whether it's a couple of weeks or a month. But at some point, you're going to meet face to face. But when this whole pandemic kicked off and you were trying to date, that, and then a lot of married couples was home. I've seen reports where domestic violence ticked up, because now you home with each other. Now you get on each other. Now when you're able to go to work and deal with it, hopefully by the time you get home, you're able to decompress on your way home, and you come home. But now y'all both in the house working virtually. So can you talk from that, both of those aspects, from the domestic violence ticking off for the married couples, and also the single trying to date in a virtual world?
Right. So I've been fortunate in a couple of ways. One, I was deemed an essential worker, so I didn't have that downtime in the house with my family, like a lot of people did. Mm-hmm. So I continued to work. Two, I've been married for the last 13 years, so I've had very little to none experience as far as the online dating and the Zoom and all this kind of good stuff.
Right.
And from what I've heard, I am glad, and I pray that things continue to go well between me and my wife, because I will be lost trying to date in this new world. But you're right as far as the increase in domestic violence and family discord. So again, my wife, she's a clinician, and she's seen an uptick in that being a topic of discussion as far as how to deal with the significant other that's constantly in your face. I mean, they're learning each other.
Right.
There's some ways that you communicate with others that may not feel comfortable, for your partner. So, you learn, I cannot raise my voice even in a moment of passion, because there are two ways, you raise your voice. You can raise your voice in anger,
right,
or you can be passionate about a situation. Like, I really feel passionate about this, and your voice get high, you get excited. Mm-hmm. But both ways, it could come off as being scary. I've experienced that, right, even at my job. So there has been an uptick in domestic violence. There has been an uptick in marital discord. Mm-hmm. That's been a topic of a lot of discussions that that the clinicians are dealing with. I had a clinician call me earlier, right before coming here. Mm-hmm. She got two, a man and wife on her caseload, but they decided to come to therapy together because they was working on an issue. So I had to help her figure out how to build that as a family session instead of right, a group session or whatever. But it is an uptick. Domestic violence and family discord is becoming more of a issue in behavioral health.
Yeah. And I actually did some research while I was at my desk today, and I had been doing some research anyway, because it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And I was surprised to learn in 2017, African Americans had one of the highest suicide rates in the United States, and this is during 2017. And I went on to do some other research, and they talked about African American in the United States compared to other race as it deals with mental health, and the numbers for me was very alarming because especially when it comes to suicide, because as African American, let's just be real, we say we might shoot somebody, we ain't shooting ourselves.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? I mean, I've said that all the time. I may shoot you, but I ain't shooting myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I was really shocked. I looked on several different sources, and all of them pretty much was in line to say, and especially starting in 2017 up to and really ran into 2018, the number of suicides within African America it jumped quite significant throughout the United States, and I was really shocked to read that, because I hadn't really did a whole lot of research on suicide with African American until I thought about this podcast and the whole brainstorming of how I was going to go about it.
Right.
And I found that very interesting to that point of we that number is so high in the United States.
I can believe that, but I can honestly say with the individuals that we serve in behavioral health, the number of suicides is very minimal, and that's because I guess we want to take credit for the work we're doing. We providing a good service, but I can believe, especially with the uptick of social media. I've read many stories where individuals do their suicides live. Because any attention is better than no attention, right? So I can believe the uptick in suicides in not just African American or our communities, but in throughout all of America.
Yeah, especially very high in the military family. Right. Like I said, I went back and looked at some of my numbers so I could speak more on a statistic base. And in the course of the military, our numbers are very high. I think they say every minute or so a soldier takes his life. I think every minute, and some say every 30 seconds. So it's within a minute, 30 seconds throughout the United States, there's someone, a soldier or a veteran, that's taking his life, and that's a real disturbing thing for me, being a veteran, and probably the people that listen to my podcast that have served or retired from the military. And because there's a lot of services out there for us. I'm saying there's a lot of service out there, but a lot of people they get and I've asked homeless people in Philly. I do a lot of community service, especially downtown where the amusement park, the open amusement park is. A lot of homeless people sleep in that park area down there. And we go down there and feed, give out clothes and stuff like that once a month. And some of the fraternities and organizations I belong to. And I talk to them, and a lot of them say, they just don't want to deal with the red tape. They rather just live out there on their own. And I always try to encourage them to, at least go to the VA, get in the system and try to get the help they can. But a lot of them just don't want to be deal with the democracy or the red tape of going through the whole system or getting help. And so I think there should be I would like to personally see councils actually go down and into the homeless, where the homeless is at, and actually just talk to them, just have a conversation, engage them. I think that would be something that's would be money well worth their time, just go down and have a conversation, because it's amazing when you talk to people, just have a normal conversation, what they would tell you, versus trying to come straight at them from, mental health side, just first try to learn the person. And I'm just, I'm not a mental health person, but that's just my view, and then maybe, you can go from there. But I would love to see that, and I'm going to try to work on maybe getting that something, maybe work on that in the future as a project. Is actually going down and actually just taking some people that's professional in the field, and just go down and talk to the people. And maybe you can help them. Maybe you can bring a different perspective to them. Right.
So in my career, I've worked with county-based behavioral health, where we worked with one big building, and all the services was in that big building. It was government ran. Mm-hmm. But in 2005, the state decided to divest behavioral health service to the private sector. And now, in July 1st of 2021, they're looking at going through Medicaid transformation. So Medicaid, not Medicaid, but behavioral health goes through all these transitions. And as they go through transitions, people just don't know how to access services as before. And it used to, if you need behavioral health services, you go down to mental health center.
Right.
So now, mental health centers no longer provide behavioral health services, so it's scattered throughout the communities. So people really don't know how to access services as they did before. Right. So that's one of the things. The MTOs, or managed care organizations, they've put a lot of effort in educating the public on how to access services, but there's still a lot of work to do. Yeah. Now, as far as the homeless population, there is a sector in behavioral health called transition to community living, where they take individuals that have a history of homelessness or have been inappropriately placed, like in a psychiatric hospital, group home, or rest home. They may have some behavioral health, but they may be like 36 and living in a rest home because they have behavioral health. Well, they shouldn't be living in a rest home, because rest homes are built for and made for the elder. Right. So so they're taking these individuals out of these inappropriate placements and finding homes for them. So we've been working in that sector since 2016. So what we found is people get used to a certain lifestyle. So let's say we find someone that's been homeless, living on the streets, living in tents in the woods. When we'll find them what we consider a nice home, we'll find them an apartment. We'll pay for furniture. We'll get utilities up and going. We'll get services in place where to get their behavioral health needs met. We get all their healthcare needs met, and we say, all right, this is your home, and we put them in the home and we leave them. And they're in there and they're bored, and they're like, you know what? I want to go back to the tent in the woods.
Because for one, the community and the friends and the bond they build with other people out there,
it's
now they don't have that same.
That is correct.
Even though some people might say, well, that's a crazy support system. They support each other.
They support each other. That is correct.
Because of course, they live in the same environment.
Right.
So they have a lot in common. Versus you taking someone out, now you placing them in, like you said, a nice apartment or a nice home or whatever. Now they don't have that support.
That is correct.
And people that can relate to them.
That is correct. Yeah, because we've had individuals that were living in like a rest home for years, and they get their own apartment, and they're like, I don't want to stay here. I used to live in a rest home where I can walk out of my room, knock on the neighbor door, and like, hey, let's play some spades. Right. I don't have that anymore. Right. So we've had to do some things like help them, transition from living in institutions to their own place, like having them volunteer at that rest home. Okay. And then they can leave the rest home and then go to their own place. Or we've seen places or times where they go back to the woods and say, "Hey guys, I got a place. Come on," and bring everybody from the woods to their apartment, and then
that sounds like facing.
Yeah. Bring everybody from the woods, their bed bugs, all kind of stuff. Bring them to the apartment, and then when we do our inspections, they say, "All right, y'all gotta hide," and we can see the remnants of all your friends in there or whatever, and the landlords are calling us like, "Hey, when y'all not there, it's it's
going down.
It's a party." Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's been some efforts made towards working with the homeless population. There are a couple of services that the managed care organizations have that help find homes, but it's not always an easy transition. Like I said, people get used to a certain lifestyle, and they want to keep it. One of the things that COVID-19 did with the homeless population was it just made them vulnerable. Mm-hmm. They didn't have access to masks. They didn't have access to. They weren't able to wash their hands on a regular basis. They weren't practicing social distancing. They were doing they were doing their own thing. So they were more vulnerable. A lot of our homeless individuals, did get COVID-19, and so how do you quarantine someone that's homeless for 14 days?
That's very, very, very hard to do.
Right. So when their lifestyle is based on, if they don't move, if they don't, pedal, they don't ask for that $2,
Right.
they're not able to live,
Right.
So it's especially in the wintertime when it's cold and they only need that $19.37 to pay for that one night.
Right.
They gotta
Yeah.
bump COVID, bump the quarantine. I gotta get that $19.
Or even the shelters. I mean, that's even
Right.
a breathing ground because unless the shelters have, I'm sure they have, but you think about a mass group of people in a closed environment. That's
Right.
even another breathing line for COVID. So yeah, so I can definitely see that. So we're getting in close to our time. So give us some parting last words would you like to say about mental health? Even in next month is Mental Health Awareness Month, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So being in your field, if you want to leave us with some parting words to people out there that may be going through something, may feel like hey, I don't want to go talk to somebody or whatever the case. What advice would you give them?
I would strongly encourage people to seek out professional help. I know there's a lot of stigma associated with looking for professional help, but it's okay, and it's becoming more and more popular. And there's been some people like Charlamagne the God or other famous people that's promoting use of professional help.
Right.
So that stigma is decreasing, but there's still a lot of work to do as far as people looking for professional help. It's okay. We are using privacy and confidentiality,
right.
So it's not like if you go even on the phone or Zoom or in the office, it's not like you go to a clinician and you talk about your problems or whatever, that they're gonna go to McDonald's and be like, girl, I had Johnny in my office and man, that joke was a trip, and start, so that's not the case,
Right.
So it's there's going to be some information given later on in this podcast as far as how to reach out and get help.
Yeah.
I strongly encourage everyone to get professional help, and it's okay.
Hey, I want to thank you for coming and being on the Kelvis podcast today. I really appreciate it. Again, this is something that was near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate you taking the time out to come. We're going to provide a PowerPoint presentation that's going to be included in this podcast to give some general information. We always tell you to seek professional help. Check with your local help providers, local clinics, your health department. To seek that advice, because again, we are not here to give you advice. We're just giving you information and entertainment. But again, thank you for joining the Kelvis podcast. As always, greatly appreciate it. Thank you, and to my frat out there, y'all know what it is. Stigma for life, baby.